Welcome, everyone, to the financial impact of the cloud. What's valuable for your business? Today, I'm so happy to have Patrick Maese, our Vice President of Client Experience, joining me, Ryan Lakin, President of Iron Edge, here on today's Webisode. And we're going to talk about something that is really interesting and what we've seen progress over the last, 10 plus years of this migration to the cloud.
Definitely. And I think, just looking at the pictures that you see here, you can tell that we've probably been in the industry for a long time because we look like kids.
These were many moons ago. These photos were taken. I refuse to have my headshot updated because I don't want to admit the fact that I'm getting older.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. But no, it gives us some insight on what we've seen really over the past 10, 15 years in the industry, this big transformation to the cloud and what it looks like. Historically speaking, a lot of organizations have always been used to having all of their IT infrastructure in their offices in a back closet somewhere. And really over the past 10 years, that's changed. It's changed remarkably where IT in the cloud has become so mature that it's definitely a viable solution for every organization, and most organizations have already adopted it. And so we'll talk about kind of the benefits of it, what we tend to hear from our peers and from our clients on concerns and the benefits of that. So we'll kind of dive into things here, right? So really what we want to talk about is why you would want to choose, cloud. Or first, let's open up the discussion on what is cloud, right?
Cloud is a marketing term, Patrick.
That's true. Yeah. You want to take that one, Mr. Ryan?
I think that the first step in defining return on investment is defining what's mattering to your organization, is really defining first what is cloud. So I think cloud is a marketing term. Love marketing for coming up with a great brand around cloud, except that it is very all-encompassing. So cloud is everything from Office 365 to NetSuite to software as a service, Salesforce, and then infrastructure hosted on someone else's servers. I mean, at the end of the day, you're renting versus buying. That's what the cloud is, and that's where the industry has been progressing. I mean, I during your intro, it kept coming to mind of cloud is the new normal, because we all love the new normal term that we've coined over the last 3 years. But it really has. The software manufacturers, the industry as a whole of technology in business is a cloud first mentality now. So defining what the ROI and having a holistic view of what it takes to run your business and keep it operational then defines what your cloud strategy is going to be.
Yeah, and I think what brought us here to this point where cloud is so ubiquitous is really the onset of the internet, the fact that connectivity is so widespread that you have fast connectivity or fast internet from your home, from your office, from your phone. It's everywhere. So when you have that type of connectivity, it really caused that whole industry to explode, because suddenly you can put resource heavy and application heavy stuff that doesn't have to live on a network that had a cable plugged into it to give you fast connection. Suddenly that fast internet connection gives you all of this ability that's in quote the cloud, accessible anywhere, right?
I mean, if you remember the good old days when we started our careers, I mean, you had to dial up.
Yeah.
The
and
modem
you can't do anything
tones.
like on a modem, like a 56K.
Can you
modem?
imagine getting back on a modem these days? I mean, we are dating ourselves, but my cell phone is way faster than any modem thing that I've ever used.
For sure.
I mean, and so I think you're exactly right. The cloud is an advent of the fact that we have this unfettered internet connectivity available to us anywhere, in our pocket, at home, on an airplane.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. So that ability has transformed the industry where especially, and we'll talk about a little bit more about this later, but the fact that the whole pandemic situation where having that ability to work from anywhere, from your phone or from your home, having those resources available in the internet has been transformative for a lot of the industry and a lot of the companies.
And so defining what matters to a business is really about what is our return to operations is a term we use. Total cost of ownership is another term. Return on investment, but really looking at defining what matters in ROI for a business today is it's all about uptime. The number one cost in 90 some odd % of businesses is their people. And if the systems are down, the people are down and they're not being efficient. So that's really, I think, where we've seen this cloud maturity happen, is that they're able to keep that uptime higher than if you have all of your infrastructure, all your servers and applications living in the closet down in the basement.
Yeah.
And that's really the measurement that needs to be done, of like looking at this cloud migration, this long march of how do we better utilize our systems and future plan and scale out, because we want to maintain our costs in any business.
And most organizations have already adopted a cloud system in some way, shape, or form these days. Whether that's email, you'll often see that that's somewhere hosted in with some provider, right? Office 365 is a great example. Or some sort of SaaS application, like an application in the cloud, like QuickBooks or something like that, where it's hosted by somebody and they're managing that system. So you typically have these little client silos or data silos that may have a hybrid environment where you have some stuff in the cloud and some stuff locally. But I think as organizations are starting to see their internal infrastructure, their servers starting to come to a maturity standpoint where they're starting to age out, they're coming to the decision of, well, what do I do? Do I buy a new server or a bunch of new servers, or do I just move this stuff to somebody else like Microsoft to host that for us? And so that's where it brings us to this kind of this fork in the road of, how do you determine, do I make that leap fully, moving all of my systems up to a provider, a cloud provider, or do I retain that information and that technology in my office and with my arms around it so I can see it in the closet?
I think that the business leaders and decision makers are exactly right, at a fork in the road. They're making this conscious decision based on operating expenditure versus capital expenditure. Which one is better for my business? If you're refreshing a gigantic server network infrastructure in your office, that is certainly a CapEx cost. Is that the right move for your business? And does that meet your future objectives? Versus, hey, you know what? We don't want to be in this server business in our closet anymore. Let's move our applications out. And as I've said for a long time, as the applications go, so go the network. A lot of times, one of these future planning and strategy conversations to have in the business is, what are our key business line applications doing? And what you're seeing in the industry as a whole from the manufacturer side is everyone's moving to subscription. Love the model. Wall Street loves the model. So everyone's going to go in that direction. I honestly, and I'll put on my future telling hat, you're not going to be able to buy on-premise software or non-subscription based software in the next 3 to 5 years from any provider. Everybody's moved that way, including Microsoft, including Intuit, including, SAP. All of the big ERPs do it. It's all a subscription. And so when you factor those costs and look at the scalability the cloud provides, it's almost a no choice decision. Like, the manufacturers are going to make you move into their cloud option. You're not going to really have a choice, but that lack of choice needs to be brought into the conversation.
Yeah. And what we tend to find is, like, when you're sitting down and you're trying to plan for your infrastructure for the next really 5 years, because that's what hardware lasts. It lasts about 5 years.
5-year warranty. Like,
5-year warranty. That's when stuff starts to fail and you're getting to the risky territory, right? So you have to sit down and look at your organization and say, okay, where does my organization, where does it fit in 5 years? Where do we see our growth happening in 5 years? What happens along the way? And basically try to make that prediction so that you can buy all of your equipment for that 5-year lifespan. And that's really hard to do.
One might say impossible, given the historical events, depending on when someone might be watching this. Besides those watching it live, if you were pre-global pandemic, you're making a 5-year plan, and then suddenly a global meltdown economic situation occurs. There's no planning for that.
Mhm.
And if you had already made this massive capital investment prior to the pandemic coming in play, like it's like building a 10-bedroom house and hoping you'll have 10 kids. You're building for the future when the future is unknown. And that's one of the risks of having a capital expenditure model and looking at this saying, okay, well, why is there a benefit to cloud? The benefit of cloud is it cheaper? Probably not. But does it allow me to infinitely scale up and down depending on what the economy does, what health crisis we have, what business crisis we might have? You're paying for that flexibility in the cloud, but at the end of the day, it's giving you infinite scalability and infinite ability to turn up and turn down.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and the feature sets too, right? So oftentimes when you would have, say, a line of business application that you had in your environment, on your network, in your server closet, right? Oftentimes those application updates or patches are applied, if you're on top of things, maybe quarterly, maybe once every couple of year or two, right? To get new feature upgrades or new version upgrades of these applications. Well, in the cloud, the provider is going to be responsible for adding these features, adding the security updates. All that stuff is handled behind the scene, and it's continuous, right? So you're basically paying a service fee, and all of these features are added over time, and it's continually updated, and it's continually, all these features and all these security updates are going to be applied and maintained by the vendor. Where when you're doing it yourself, you have to have somebody do that for you and be reliant on your IT support and the vendors to supply those. And so they're moving away from these big, service packs that you would see for an application. And they're trying to get it to a point where it's iteratively being updated and changed throughout the process. And so with that, there's the benefit of getting new features and new functionality of these applications all the time.
Well, and the reason that the software development manufacturers are able to do that is because they control the entire stack, right? And so when you've got on-premise software installations, as a software developer, you're dealing with all the other things running on that system that are going to interact with your update or your package release. So the QA process is so much longer versus a software as a service solution like a Salesforce, Office 365, Intuit, QuickBooks Online. They can iterate on weekly sprints and add new features weekly. Doing it to on-premise software requires much larger QA. I mean, how many of us have had an update from a software manufacturer that didn't work, right? It broke something unrelated because their update changed this thing. I mean, software development's hard, but doing it in a vacuum of their SaaS application allows them to iterate so much faster, bringing new innovation to market faster, new feature functionality, all as part of that monthly subscription. Again, I think that's why we see them moving in that direction, because it's honestly easy for software development to do it in their ecosystem, in their box, and your access is a web browser a lot of the times. Yeah. That's one thing they're writing for. Not to mention the fact that since they control this ecosystem, their development team controls it, it actually allows for a higher or greater ability to provide cybersecurity, right? They can secure their data, they can secure this ecosystem in its shell versus what you as a business owner can provide cybersecurity at the firewall level, maybe something on the server running some traditional antivirus software. There's a lot more you can do when all those eggs are up in this basket and that vendor is spending millions of dollars that we don't have in our budget, but they do for that cybersecurity of that software as a service application.
Liability is also a good example too. Like, obviously, if you're trying to secure your own environment and you have limited funds or limited budget, the bad guys don't care. Like, they don't care how deep your pockets are. What's important is protecting that information, protecting that data. And companies like Microsoft with very deep pockets are able to apply those funds with a much higher degree because they have a lot of skilled labor to plug those holes and get a higher level of security for that environment. And that's critical, right? So obviously, if your sensitive information is with another vendor in the cloud, they're going to have to be liable for protecting that information, right? And so they need to apply high levels of security to their environment so that they're able to protect your information.
I couldn't agree more. I just don't think we can't hold a match to what a Microsoft can spend on cybersecurity versus a small business with 70 employees. You're just not going to have the budget.
And you can step into it too, right? So like you look at the 365 product stack, you may not have a high level of governance or a high level of requirements for security. You may be a small company and you don't need to pay for that high level of security. But if you grow and if you find yourself, you're working with contracts that require you to have a higher level of governance or security, you can basically go up to an additional subscription tier to gain additional security and information logging and auditing and all that kind of fun stuff to give you a higher level of security. Whereas if you needed to do that yourself in your own environment, you have to deploy all this technology, have people that are running it, maintaining it, monitoring it. That's an expensive endeavor, right? And it's easier just to kind of pay a monthly subscription fee to gain that higher level of security if your organization needs it.
It comes down to that future scalability, the turn up, turn down factor. I mean, that's the real benefit.
So we're going to switch gears here a little bit. Lost opportunities. We talked a little bit earlier on the top of the conversation about pandemic, COVID.
I don't know, when I see this slide, Patrick, I look at like, what was that? There's a movie. What was it? Lost in Space.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's immediately what comes to my mind. I see this image and then the word lost opportunities. I'm like, lost in space. I don't know. That's a side tangent, but it just went straight to my head.
So lost opportunities. What, Brian, if you were an organization and you decided, you know what, cloud's not right for me. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm just not ready to move my stuff to the cloud. And we talked about the pandemic, but certainly that's a great example because everyone was impacted by that situation. And we found certainly a lot of our clients and a lot of the customers that we have that had already adopted a cloud infrastructure, cloud solution at the time. Talk to us a little bit about what you saw with that onset of a sudden shift in the way that people worked.
I mean, it was a breakneck shift, right? I mean, overnight, everyone's got to work from home. And companies that were already marching towards this cloud, moving things to cloud applications and software as a service, really didn't miss a beat. They were already configured for it because the cloud delivery mechanism of this software is already kind of an everywhere option, right? I can log in from anywhere, which made work from home seamless. Mm-hmm. The challenge that companies had that were not in that area or had everything on premise is suddenly everyone's forced to work from home. This global pandemic shutdown. There was a lot of effort had to be put in over a very short period of time to get things able, right? A lot of, we'll call them corners were cut to allow people to be efficient and work from home. So I think the lost opportunity of not being in a cloud infrastructure model is that you can't pivot, right? You can't move on a dime. And I'm not saying that any business does. I mean, it's hard to move a ship, right? But it's certainly limited the ability of a lot of organizations to say, hey, Monday, we're going to be working from home because the county made us. Yeah, good luck, IT guys, over the weekend. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many VPNs had to get set up? How many things? The cybersecurity became a huge concern during the pandemic because of how quickly things were deployed to allow access to these systems that were all in the office with no people in the office to use them. Everyone was remote. So it's a high risk, right? And so the opportunity loss is the downtime of that effort to make those changes, the inefficiencies those changes made from a workforce management standpoint of people relearning how to basically function and do their job sitting at their kitchen table with systems and processes that weren't designed for work from home. And so the cloud has really opened up and these cloud applications opened up the ability to honestly grow your talent pool, grow the workforce, do things differently, and hire all over the country. I mean, you know, I know numerous of our clients are hiring anywhere in the country because of the talent pool issues currently. The job market's hot, unemployment is practically zero. And so they're using cloud. This cloud is allowing and really enabling that business to hire the best and brightest anywhere in all 50 states.
Yeah. Yeah. One last one that should be driven home is also business continuity. The fact that us as an IT provider, we were ensuring, because also we live in Texas, which is very much hurricane country, right?
Hurricane season started 2 days ago.
Even before the pandemic situation, which hit every organization, us as an organization had to take those risks to heart and build an environment that gives us that continuity for situations like hurricanes. Like, can you tell us a little bit about how we thought about, from our organization standpoint, using cloud solutions to give us business continuity in those sort of situations?
Well, I think that if we go back in time, one of the first things that companies do to avoid outages in their office is they moved their physical infrastructure from one physical location into a data center that was hardened, category 5 wind ratings, diesel generators, extra power grid connections. Now we're seeing it where we're moving it to the cloud, and those cloud data centers are still data centers, same hardened facilities. They're just all over the country. And so the nice thing when you deal with a natural disaster type of situation is your data, your infrastructure running on these cloud applications is typically multi-region, right? So it's might be in the central region, it might be in the west region or the east region. Even companies like Intuit have multiple data centers that are live, and the data just shares all the time. So you're hitting one of two load balanced data centers somewhere in the country, maybe three. So if the East Coast loses power, which we had a massive power blackout many years ago in the Northeast, the system still ran, you still were able to operate. And we look at that in our business the exact same way. How do we continue to function if Houston has another hurricane, Harvey situation, people can't leave their house, can't get to the office, don't have power, don't have internet? How does the company continue to function? And we do the same thing where we're just multi-homed. We have redundant data centers in the cloud, right? And our emails in Office 365, these sort of things, right? So you're constantly working.
Yeah, if your systems are down for any number of hours or days, that's a real hard impact to your revenue stream. So business continuity is a huge selling point of adopting cloud solutions, right?
One of the hardest things when I meet with prospects and clients is identifying what's their real cost per hour of the business, right? What does downtime really cost? And we actually made this little calculator where, hey, give me the number of employees, what's average salary, what's all the components of running a business, right? Where are your number one costs? And if that's off for, what does 5 minutes cost you? What does an hour cost you? What does a week cost you? That it's significant when put in that regard. When those folks can't be productive, that is lost. That's just lost revenue, lost abilities. There's only 24 hours in every day. If the systems are offline for 8 of them, you can't get those 8 hours back tomorrow.
And if you need a very short 8-hour return to operations, then obviously you would need to prop up or fund some sort of continuity plan that gives you that 8-hour window, right? So if your maximum downtime is 8 hours, then you need to make sure that you're propping it up with extra systems and redundancy and all that kind of stuff, and that costs real money.
Significant amount of money.
Yeah. So we're going to move the topic a little bit about IT as an advantage. This is going to be obviously the cost benefits of cloud investments.
I think we were already talking about it without even realizing it.
Yeah. So it's a cost center, right? So we touched the fact that IT being spread out across different SaaS applications and cloud applications, and the advantages of utilizing those, right? So there's definitely some cost savings with regards to, and we talked about continuity and having that part of your organization strategy. What are some other topics, Ryan, that come to mind from an IT as an advantage?
Well, I think that I've come to this realization over the last, I guess, year or two. Every business is an IT business, whether they realize it or not.
Hmm.
I don't know one organization that isn't reliant on technology at this point. We're all technology businesses. It just is the way it is. Everything from the guy making sandwiches down the street, the only way that he makes money is that his point of sale computer works. His credit card terminal works. Same thing for a movie theater, for a consulting practice. They've got to bill hours. They've got to have their software running. So I really have come to the mindset that every business is an IT business.
Mhm.
Every business is a technology business, because when their technology doesn't work, they're not in business. So how do you use IT as an advantage? Knowing that fact, right? I'll put it out there. That's a fact. Every business is a technology business in this day and age. How do you leverage that, know and understand it, and use IT as advantage for your growth, your scalability, your ability to increase productivity? That's the big question. And I don't have the answer of how each business does it, but it's something they need to think about, of how do we leverage technology to drive our organization forward? How do we develop faster? How do we innovate faster utilizing technology? And one of the things that I've noticed with the advent of the cloud over the last 10 years that it's been slowly coming is you see the iteration of product faster. Somebody has a wild, crazy, big, hairy, audacious idea, and they can quickly spin up something in a cloud, do some software development, and they can have that to market, that minimum viable product to market in months, not years. I mean, you in an organization who say, hey, we have a skunkworks type project we want to work on, and maybe we're going to solve this problem with some automation. We're going to design some software. They can literally spin that up in the cloud with no capital expenditure whatsoever. Just turn it on. It works great. It doesn't work, turn it off. So they can iterate, design, develop, fail fast with a cloud world versus spending $200,000 to build this infrastructure to run this maybe idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and certainly us as a support company, a service-oriented support company, we've seen transitions on how that works, right? We typically, 10 years ago, our support model was to support, servers that were in a closet and a network and users' computers. Now that all this information's up in the cloud, you may move your email or your data or your files up to 365, to SharePoint, to their mail system. I think oftentimes there's a misconception where, if I move my, all of my services up to a cloud, do I need IT support? Do I need an IT guy to support the environment? What does that look like, right? Do I call Microsoft if my email goes down, or if I have problems with connection? Who do I call it? And so we've seen our service model shift to kind of being vendor management and vendor related, because we still need to interface with those vendors and being able to understand how all of those pieces work in harmony, especially from a security perspective, when you have data kind of floating around between multiple data silos and computers, but having IT support systems that is able to understand all of those different applications, all those different cloud layers, and be able to interface with your end users, right? You can't expect to have an end user understand where all of your different cloud providers are, and if they have a problem with any one issue, that, well, who do I call, right? Do I call Microsoft for this problem? Do I call QuickBooks or Intuit? What do I do?
Yeah, the IT department role, whether you use an outsourced managed service provider like Iron Edge or you have internal IT, that department's still a requirement. You're never going to get rid of that. You have to have that frontline IT service, user experience management layer, whether it's an on-prem server that they're managing in the back end or a cloud system they're managing in the back end, because this layer knows your business and how everything interacts. So without that, cloud won't be successful. You can't just pick up the phone and call Microsoft and say, hey, I can't get this email on my phone. They're not set up to have those calls. In fact, the majority of clouds and SaaS application vendors are not frontline support. They don't do that tier one. And those that do have no concept of how that interacts with that within your business. And so you have to have this layer, whether internal or outsourced, that understands both your business and how you're using the cloud and where the cloud sits in your organization to manage it, to manage that user experience, to ensure that your employees are productive, and that IT is an advantage.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So
I
if
love
you were to look
questions.
into your crystal ball, obviously you've seen where we're at today and where most organizations are moving to.
Crystal ball.
In the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, where do you see the industry going, Ryan?
I think that in the next 3 to 5, everything is a subscription. I mentioned that earlier, where the manufacturers, the Wall Street, they want this subscription revenue. So you're not going to have a choice of not buying in a subscription base. I really believe that we're going to get to the point where, again, and maybe timing is, who knows, right? But everything is going to be a SaaS-based application.
I agree.
So I look at my kids, honestly. Here's this iPad. Here's this tablet. Oh, I want to do this. Let me download an app, right? It's an app that is cloud connected to some data center for them to, whether it's Minecraft or school or homework, like everything is an app on an iPad that's always on. And as we see more and more of this 5G rollout and this high-speed wireless data, it's always connected. I really think we're going to get to the point where I don't even know if we'll have laptops anymore. Everything is going to be this
I strongly
device.
believe that. I think that the devices that we'll be using are going to be, the phones and the tablets and the things that don't require a lot of on device power, right? Like you don't need a whole lot of resources to run stuff that's from the cloud. And if you do, you can always run a computer in the cloud with all of those resources.
I mean, we're seeing that now, where more and more things are moving to Windows Virtual Desktop, where it's like, hey, give me this almost thin client of the old days. Remember old green screens? Now they're not green, but it's the same sort of idea. I have a low power device that connects full time to the internet. I have all of my workhorseness in the cloud. Everything is there on the screen. And remotely presented to me over this internet connection. And I think that that's a stepping stone. We've come full circle back to green screens,
mainframes,
mainframes,
to real super powerful desktop computers, to now just a tablet.
Look, if there's anything we know, is that history repeats itself, and technology is not original. They just reinvent it and they put a better brand on it each time.
And that's
so cloud. Now we have cloud.
That's the brand.
It's cloudified. I just really think that the future is interesting, and I think that I think we're going to end up being in this just, hey, what do you need to solve this problem, or what problem are you solving? There's an app for that, and everything's these silos of apps. And the difficulty will be for IT departments and IT service providers is their role will shift into, I need to be the manager of the box around all these applications to ensure compliance, security, and functionality. That's how this role is going to shift is, we're going to have to provide that endpoint security to ensure data protection on that end user device, and make sure that all the silo of applications that are SaaS-based software as a service applications are managed and controlled correctly. And it'll be about user experience. I mean, that's where IT is going to land versus, I've got to build this gigantic server stack with storage area networks and geo redundancy over a dark fiber connection. I'm using all these crazy, technical words, but that's old. That's done. We've now moved to this, hey, click, buy, subscribe, move on down the road.
Yeah.
But what do you think, Patrick? I mean, this is me, my opinion, which is probably crazy, but what do you see going on in the world?
I mean, again, the ubiquitous nature of internet connectivity has gotten us to this point, right? And it's only going to get faster. You're going to have more resources, 5G's on the horizon, those sort of things, where you just have limitless amount of speed and access to all this wealth of information and data and resources. I think it's only going to get more of what we're seeing now, which is these applications and resources and all this sort of technology that was in the cloud. And in the past couple of years, even the network type layer that you're traditionally see in offices has moved to the cloud as well. So definitely this is the future of what, and I won't even say future, but the present.
The now.
But, yeah, it's the now, but we're only going to see more and more adoption of the current technologies that are moving to the cloud.
It's an exciting time for everybody. Patrick, thanks so much for being with me today. This was a fun webisode to put together and just talk about kind of the future. We should put on some tinfoil hats. We can do a better job next time. But thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.